The Baltimore Ravens win ugly against the New York Jets in week number 12, but it earned them a winning record and the AFC North lead. We instantly react to the win and so much more coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this instant reaction edition of the show on Sunday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. And a reminder that Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network. So again, thank you if you're an everyday or first-time listener somewhere in the middle. Thank you as well. Really appreciate all the support and all the community that we have over here on Locked On Ravens. And we have a lot to dive into today. The Ravens, they beat the Jets. They do it in ugly fashion. Very poor first half, better second half. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Ravens taking the AFC North lead. It is officially there. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, both at 6-5. Crazy that we're here now, considering where this team was just a short while ago, it feels like, and it doesn't feel like that it was. We'll also dive into what's next for Baltimore. Obviously, the short week coming up against Cincinnati on Thursday night for Thanksgiving night football. So much here to break down on Locked On Ravens. Want to remind everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right. Well, Let's dive into it. The Ravens, well, first of all, let's all celebrate because the Ravens are the AFC North leaders. They are 6-5. Pittsburgh is 6-5, but the Ravens do hold that tiebreaker, I believe, because it's conference record. Let me look up the standings real quick. But right now, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, they're there together. They are there together. And you have 2 games coming up against the Bengals. You have 2 games coming up against the Steelers. So, it's going to be really important for them to pick up as many wins there as they can. Right now, Baltimore 2-0 in the division, Pittsburgh 2-1. So that is where that comes in. But the Ravens were able to get the job done against the Jets. Again, wasn't the prettiest game I've ever seen in the world, and not even close. The first half was pretty abysmal, and there are certainly concerning trends we'll talk about, with Lamar Jackson as well. But there are a lot of conversations that definitely do need to be had here. Let's start with Lamar. I think that's the biggest story of the day for me, where Lamar just does not look healthy right now. And this was the first game. I said this on the watch long if you were tuned in, watching along with us during the game. But, we kind of all knew it, and we were seeing it in games here and there, at least for me. But this, was the full game to me, where I was just like, all right, Lamar clearly, something is up here. He was missing throws, didn't look like he was himself, and he hasn't looked like he was himself for a while now, but these injuries and whatnot clearly are piling up on him. He took a couple of other hits today, but wasn't as egregious as it was against Cleveland. Obviously, I hope there's never a game like Cleveland again, but Lamar finishes the day 13 of 23 for 153 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions on the day. Also ran 7 times for 11 yards, but really wasn't effective on the ground. I mean, he was trying to use some of those open rushing lanes, but, was getting caught from behind or not really, getting involved or active there. So, it's an area of his, it's an area of his game right now, where there's not a lot for Lamar to work with right now. And look, at the end of the day, Lamar, we know that 100% healthy Lamar is what this team needs to win football games consistently. And he's not there right now. The concerning trend is that the offense has started slow for the last handful of weeks. And, you're able to get the job done, open up some rushing lanes for Derrick Henry later in this game. But it was bad. I mean, the Ravens were averaging 1.9 yards per carry at halftime, and they finished only averaging 2.9. So it wasn't like it was that vast of an improvement. Henry had 2 touchdowns on the day, but averaged 3 yards a carry. This offense is just, it's in a bad place right now. And, you're playing a Bengals defense that is not necessarily known for being a great defense. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But, I hope Lamar, because he's not going to have a lot of recovery time here between between the Jets and the Bengals game here. That mini bye is going to be his longest opportunity for recovery, in my opinion. So that's going to have to be where he gets his rest. But we know that with that Bengals offense, it doesn't look like they're going to have T. Higgins on Thursday, by the way, after he suffered a concussion. So he'll have to go through that protocol pretty quickly. They'll have Jamar Chase back, but, if he's not able to play, that is a big loss for them. So we all know that we're expecting that to be somewhat of a shootout here, despite the way that the Ravens defense has been playing. And I see John saying, hope Kyle is okay. Yeah, that's a tough. I don't think John Harbaugh didn't have any updates, I don't think, on Kyle Hamilton, at least not that I saw, but that is a concerning injury to me. Hopefully he is okay, because he is the life force of that defense. Okay, good. John Harbaugh, Kyle Hamilton did not suffer a serious injury. But again, you have a short week, so hopefully he is all right for the game coming up. But yeah, the offense certainly showing some concerning trends. Zay had a good game, 5 for 58. But other than that, Tez had a nice play where he burned Brandon Stevens. They got Derrick. And I think that's what they should do. They should get Derrick Henry in this running game, these running backs involved in the passing game a little bit more here, in my opinion. I'd be really excited to see them start to use some of those, just like in the flat, check off to Derrick Henry and use some of those plays effectively. But, the Jets defense, they weren't necessarily like getting after Lamar Jackson. But I mean, there were a couple of plays. Andrew Voorhees got, turned around and thrown to the ground on one play. Like, there were some rough plays by the Ravens. And it just feels like there's no push up front for them, where it felt like they were in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7 all day. And the concerning part to me is that this is not the Browns defense they play. The Jets coming into this game were a middling to poor defensive unit. They were 20th in the league in rush defense and 19th in the league in pass defense. And the Ravens made them look like they were Cleveland for the majority of this game. They got some timely penalties, some pass interference calls, which really helped them. Keaton had a couple of timely plays. Lamar and Zay were able to connect for a couple of timely plays. So, a win is a win. I mean, look, it's an ugly win, but guess what? It counts all the same in the win column, right? Like, it's all a win nonetheless. But now your stretch of quote unquote, like, easy teams, that's out the window now. That's gone, because your schedule kind of, with Baltimore's schedule now, you got the Bengals on Thursday night, followed by the Steelers, followed by the Bengals again, followed by the Patriots, followed by the Packers, followed by the Steelers. I wouldn't say there's an easy game left on their schedule. Now, do I think that they should win the majority of these games? I hope so. But you'd have to get rid of some of the concerning trends that we'd seen. I see a lot of people talking about Monken as well. Monken was interesting in this game, had a couple of good play calls that I liked, but, also just felt really often. By the way, the Jets play calling was worse, not using Breece Hall on some of those runs, and, running the ball 3 straight times and running the ball on 3rd down, going for just a horrendous Jets play calling there. And the Ravens, they took advantage of that, that was good. But to me, it felt like for Baltimore's offense, likely hasn't been able to really get it going this year. He had a, 1 for 10 effort here in this one. D-Hop is good for 1 or 2 clutch catches a game, and he had a couple of those. He also drew a PI penalty, or maybe it was defensive holding. Hopkins did get away with a face mask on that for sure, but we're not going to say we saw it. It is what it is there. But, then Keaton had a really nice run that was negated by a Tyler Linderbaum holding penalty. So, that was a good run that, that was a good run that is not going to show up on the stat sheet and the box score. But, also Cam saying red zone play calling is bad, and teams like the Steelers, Patriots, and Packers won't be beaten with this current red zone offense. Yeah, the Ravens in the red zone, and that's been a huge concern point. Again, for a team that was the number 1 red zone offense in the league last season, Baltimore goes 2 of 5 in the red zone. So actually, I think that will bring their number down 40%. I think that's going to bring their red zone offense down. They were at 47.2 before that, and they were at 40% in this game. So that's actually going to worsen their stats in this game. So just, you get into the 20-yard line with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you should be able to score more than you have. So I don't know. It's just, it's tough because, you see Lamar limping gingerly and, kind of with the frustration, he clearly like just can't do what he wants to out there. And Lamar said during his media availability that like this is the first time that he's going through something like this in terms of like I just think playing this way, playing when he's not at 100%, like clearly, and playing behind this poor offensive line, him having to run, but he's dealing with hamstring, knee, ankle stuff, and you're just like, but you have to have some stuff in your legs work here. If you're for any quarterback, not just mobile guys like Lamar, but for any quarterback, you got to be able to move around. And while he's certainly out there doing his thing, it just doesn't look the same as we've seen in recent seasons. So, that's tough right now because you need him at 100% or at least as close as you can get him. And in this game, this was the first time to me where we really saw like, oh, like we knew something wasn't right, obviously, but you're thinking, oh, like, yeah, something really, really is off here. And when the run game can't get going, when the throws, because again, he had a cut. And again, some of the receivers, like there were some drops in this game that were also egregious. Tylen had one. Let's see. Zay had one. Mark Andrews had one. There were a few drops in this game by the receivers. So that's something they also have to clean up. But a win is a win. Vontae, you said it, man. A win is a win. And look, shout out to the defense. We'll get to them in a couple seconds here once we head into the break. But offensively, this has now been a couple weeks in a row where the offense has truly had to get carried by this defense. Look, credit to the Ravens offense. They go down 7-0 and they're able to respond, and the defense is able to hold them. But these are games against bad teams. Like, let's just be honest about it. Cleveland is a bad team. The Jets are a bad team, and you're in like these fights with them, like these heavyweight battles for like halves or entire games. And you're going to play a heck of an offense even without T. Higgins with Cincinnati. Pittsburgh, they lost, but they still put up 28 on the Bears or however many points it was. Obviously the Patriots and the Packers, like those are good, at least better teams than what we've seen. So the offense needs to get it going. Hopefully against the Bengals defense that I've stood on this business. It's a bad Bengals defense. So hopefully they'll be able to get the job done there. They're likely not going to have Trey Hendrickson in this game, so we'll see. But, obviously the storyline of Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson, that's going to be a big conversation point. So coming up with the second part of the show, we'll keep talking about the offense, but also flip over to the defensive side of the field because, again, I'm really impressed overall. There are some concerning trends still, but overall, I'm impressed with the night and day we've seen from this Ravens defense. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you and presented by PrizePicks, and this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of the sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. You can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs, and it keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Mahomes, Steph Curry, Lamar Jackson, Nikola Jokic. See how my predictions play out. New Stacks features a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Moving along on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, celebrating multiple things here. Actually, 3 things. You got the Ravens, they beat the Jets ugly. You got the Ravens, they're above 500. And you got the Ravens, the new AFC North leaders. So a lot to celebrate here. Did it in ugly fashion, but a win is a win. So appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens again a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. Hit the like and subscribe button in both video form and audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And be sure you check out the Locked On Ravens Squad show, which is going to come up right after this instant reaction show. Myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail holding it down over there. All right, Ravens defense. This was another good game for them. I think in the first half, it was, especially with like John Mechie having essentially, I think it was a career day or close to it for John Mechie in this one. What was his final stat line, actually? He had 6 for 65 and a score. So I think he had more yards last week, but even still, he was torching this Ravens defense early. Breece Hall in the receiving game was really good. On the ground, the Ravens held them in check, just 3 yards a carry. So not really a big ground game for either team. Tyrod Taylor, 17 to 28, 222 yards, a touchdown and an interception. But Baltimore's defense held strong where it mattered. The Jets went 1 for 2 in the red zone. Second half, the Ravens only allow 3 points, and this is coming off of a shutout last week in the second half. So Baltimore's defense, again, the way this defense is operating right now and playing is incredible. And while there were some plays where the Ravens defense was giving Tyrod Taylor too much time, I do think that, you see guys like Draymond Jones, who Draymond has been unbelievable. And look, shout out to Eric DeCosta, like that acquisition. And in a vacuum, I liked it. I still wish they would have done more at the deadline, but in a vacuum, I liked that addition just from that trade in particular. 1.5 sacks for Draymond. I thought he was going to get 2 full ones, but they only credited him with 1.5. So half a sack more for Draymond, and the Ravens make the playoffs. And that pick the Ravens are going to give the Titans turns into a 4th rounder as opposed to a 5th rounder. But hey, Draymond stepped up, and he actually also threw, like literally just threw. I think Joe Tippmann was the Jets offensive lineman who he threw. So he has that dog mentality, man. Like that's the type of mentality that I think you need, and he's bringing that each and every single day. Roquan and Kyle Hamilton both really good in this game. Roquan did miss a sack on Tyrod Taylor that wasn't good, and that brings me to the other concern point for me for this Ravens defense, which is the fact that, look, the Ravens miss a lot of tackles. They have missed a lot of tackles. Now, they're not among the worst in terms of missed tackles. Actually, the 2 worst missed tackle teams in the NFL are the Bengals and the Steelers. So Ravens will get 4 games against those 2 teams coming up. But I'll tell you what, the Ravens need to tackle better. Alohi Gilman, for as good as he's been, he might be the worst tackler on the team, if I'm being honest. Just missed tackle after missed tackle for him. Roquan, obviously, a couple other guys, just really bad there. But it was timely defensive plays that I thought made the difference here for the Ravens. Obviously, Marlon's play, which was the play of the game for me, which honestly saved Baltimore in this game, on Breece Hall, just ripping at that ball. That's a guy that was just fighting for every single inch on that play, rips the ball out, Gilman recovers it. Breece probably falls into the end zone or just short of it. If that ball's not forced out, that becomes a 3-point game. Then you're feeling not so good about it. But Marlon makes the play of the game there, and the finger's all good now. He had the surgery, missed the Cleveland game, but Marlon, for some of the poor moments he's had this season, he was awesome last year for the most part, and he's still a really, really important piece of this defense. So he's a guy that you expect to make those types of plays and those game-changing moments, and I'm really happy and really glad that he was able. And you could tell how fired up he was, and a lot of the relief that it was honestly just like relief screaming to me from Marlon there. And, he was obviously hyped up, but it's just like, finally, all right, where the defense was getting stops, but at the same time, they were kind of in the danger zone right there. So we're going to see, because I'm not so sure about how the rest of this game is going, or the rest of this season is going to go for the Ravens, because you have all these, it's better offenses, better defenses for the most part, but you did what you were supposed to do during this 5-game stretch. We're looking back on it when you have teams, especially in these last 3, like the Vikings and the Browns and the Jets, you're supposed to win. Now, would I have liked those wins to be a little more convincing? Sure, absolutely I would have. And there's still concern points. But we're going to learn a lot about this team, honestly, in the next month, even before the end of the season, where you have that stretch, 3 AFC North games and the Patriots. It's going to tell us a lot about this team and who they are. It's going to be the defining stretch in their season, to be honest. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what ends up happening. But right now, Baltimore's defense is carrying this offense. And look, the offense, despite it not resulting in wins, they carried the defense. The Ravens offense was the unit that was balling out early in the season before Lamar went down. The defense was the one that was lagging behind. Now the tables have flipped. I just want a game where the Ravens offense and defense just absolutely plays lights out. Like, boom, that's it. Let's go. I want that, the Seattle game from 2023, the Detroit game from 2023, some of those big wins in 2024. Like, I want to see that happen. Mike Green comes with a sack. He had an awesome cross-chop move also on Tyrod Taylor that I think prevented a touchdown to A.D. Mitchell, who had Chidobe Awuzie beat deep. Mike Green's really coming into his own. Travis Jones was a beast on the interior. So, for Baltimore, they're really starting to turn things up. The turnovers also. I mean, TJ Tampa gets the interception at the end. Shout out to TJ. Welcome to the NFL as well for TJ, who, he ends up getting his first career interception. But, despite how some of these games have looked, despite some of the concern points that I still have, I think, Frank says it best. And, I see Laura, everybody who's saying it, a win is a win from 1-5 to 6-5 and leading the division. I mean, you can't do anything but take your hat off to the Ravens for that. You can't do anything but show your respect there and say, hey, you're winning ugly. But sometimes, the Ravens find ways to lose these types of games too, right? Like, how many times have we seen them, whether it be the Browns last year or the Raiders or the Colts 2 years ago, like some of these ugly wins, how many times have we seen the Ravens not be able to recover? I remember when Zay dropped that first down ball from Lamar. Was it first half, second half? I can't remember when it was. But I remember, like, on the watch along, you can go back and see my reaction. I was like, this just was one of those games. It's when I was super frustrated. I'm like, it's one of those games. It's one of those games where everybody's dropping everything and the timely stuff isn't happening. Like, it just felt like it was one of those games. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Finally, the Ravens start moving the ball a little bit. Finally, the Ravens start getting some more timely stops. And even though in the fourth quarter with Breece, Breece was tearing them up early in the fourth quarter. But luckily, Marlon able to get that huge play. And that, to me, is the defining play of the game. You want to know what else is a defining play of the game? Honestly, it's the defining game in general. Jordan Stout. I cannot say enough good things about Jordan Stout. He's been unbelievable this season. He, to me, is a Pro Bowler, all-pro. He's could honestly earn the highest NFL punter contract. He's in a contract year. I actually looked up during the watch along. It's about $16 million over 4 years is the highest punter contract right now. Jordan could maybe get 20. Could be. He's been that good for them this season. That one punt that hit right at the 5 and then just dove out of bounds. Like those plays, Jordan Stout, the Ravens special teams unit, we have to come up with a name. I know that the Ravens social media team did the tripod of trust or whatever it was. We need to come up with a name. We'll have to consult with Nick. And look, Steve in the chat. Steve, for those that don't know, Steve is Tyler Loop's dad. Tyler, again, I've been trying to come up with the name. Steve, I know you weren't listening with audio during the game. I called Tyler the point machine because it seems like he's the only one that wants to score points for the Ravens on some of these first halves. So we have to come up with a name for Tyler and a name for the rest of the trio of them. But look, I think that the Ravens special teams unit, particularly those three guys, have been nails all year. And, it's kept them in games, like Jordan flipping the field, Tyler converting on field goals when they need points, and keeping them at least within an arm's reach of guys. So, look, we have to see what goes on for the rest of this season for them. But so far, absolutely so good for those guys. And, I think that the Ravens kick coverage has been better this season. I think it was a bounce back game for them special teams wise in terms of just not making mistakes, which was a good thing. That's all I wanted to see. That's all I wanted to see. So really glad for this team that they were able to come up with a win. And, we can feel certain ways about certain trends, and I know I certainly do, but a win is a win, and it doesn't really matter how you get there as long as you get there. And, we'll have to revisit some of these trends as the season goes on, and we'll have to see how they respond. But, today is November 23rd, and the Ravens went 1-0 today, and they regained the North in the AFC. They regained the lead in the AFC North. I flipped around my words there. They regained the lead in the AFC North, which to me, it's a good day. It's a good day for the Ravens today. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll continue diving into this game. We'll talk about what's ahead for the Ravens. We'll look at some more trends. We'll look at some of the Ravens' key performers in this game, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned for everything we have coming up here on the Instant Reaction show of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets, delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Down the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, this promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download at Gametime today. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here. Final segment of this instant reaction edition. The Ravens, they beat the New York Jets. They move to above 500, and they take the AFC North lead. So that's a tripod that's a trifecta right there. That's what we'll call it. That's the trifecta. Man, it's a good day for the Ravens. And, be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form and audio form on Locked On Ravens. And you can follow me on social media, KaosStriker34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. If you have a friend or a family member who wants some daily Ravens coverage too, be sure to send them over here our way. We have an awesome community. We're creeping up on 17,000 subscribers on the video side of things, on the audio side of things. Our community grows each and every single day. So thank you for all of the support. Man, there's so much still that I feel like there's so much still that we can get into. And I think one of the things that I do want to talk about is some of the usage of these younger players. Keaton Mitchell, Tez Walker, like these are guys that I think can really help out the Ravens in a lot of different spots for the remainder of the season. Like Keaton with his explosiveness, Tez with his explosiveness. And I feel like those guys both deserve more touches. I feel like both of those guys have earned it. And, I get that you can play the numbers game. I don't care about a numbers game. I care about talent and who's going to help you win. I want this Ravens team to play their best guys. We've talked about that with the offensive line and, a lot of these guys. Like with Derrick Henry, I understand the conversations that are being had about him right now. Like, and what it is, what those conversations are being had. It's a lot of, is he washed? Is he not the same player? I don't think that's the case. The style that Derrick Henry runs with is just different than Keaton, in my opinion. Where, and I actually saw, I can't remember who said it in the chat, so I apologize. But the point that was made, and I agree with it, and I've said this too, is that Derrick's running style is he needs some time to get going at times with his runs individually, where, he's like a freight train. He's a train where he starts a little bit slower. Not that he starts slow, but, with him on his runs, where when he gets that ball in the backfield, when he starts picking up speed, that's when he's the most dangerous. So he needs space. He needs time to operate. With Keaton, that burst is just right there. It's just like, boom, right in your face, bursts through or bursts to the outside. It's right there. So I just think using those guys more in tandem, not saying that they should split carries or anything. Derrick should still be your bell cow. But, I think this is a pretty good number here from Cam. 3 to 4 more touches in the game. I think, it's nothing egregious. You're not giving them like 12 more touches per game. But, the Ravens with Derrick and Lamar should be producing more than they are right now. And I think part of that is just to put the ball in everybody's hands strategically, not just run guys into the ground. And not that, Derrick in this game had 21 carries. Keaton had 2. I think you can split that up a little more, especially this is the time, in my opinion, to do that. Where if Derrick had 18 carries and Keaton had 5, and I know, the run from Keaton isn't going to show up on the box score that he had late in the game, but even still, you in my opinion, I'd want to save Derrick Henry a little bit more for the postseason. Not that you're egregiously giving him 9 or 10 carries per game. You still want him up in that 16 to 20 carry range a game. But with him and Tez, and I see, Yeah, John saying Tez ran 4.36 at the combine, should get some end arounds, jet sweeps. They love Zay. I don't know. I don't think Todd's going to replace Zay on those plays. I think he just loves Zay on those plays too much, especially now that, Duvernay's been gone and we knew that Duvernay was that guy for them. And now it's Zay. I mean, I would love to see it, but I don't think that, it is going to happen. I'd love to see it though. But I see a lot of the offensive line conversation that is going on right now. Look, it's still not great. Guys are still getting pushed off the ball. Voorhees had a play where he was on the ground. That was Jawan Briggs early in the game with a sack. Lamar's having to run out of the pocket and escape. But, I did like some of like that last play with the Henry touchdown. That was awesome. That was awesome blocking up front, where Rosengarten sealed his guy on the inside. Ricard gets out there, makes a nice block. Like that was like untouched almost to the end zone touchdown. Like that's the kind of stuff that you love. And, and I see FY4B talking about, I'm not saying Lamar was good. I'm just talking about the offensive line. Lamar was not good in this game. And I talked about how he didn't look like himself and, made poor throws. Like, I'm not shielding Lamar from that criticism. I'm just talking about the offensive line in general, where there are still moments where it just doesn't look right, doesn't look good. But, Lamar in this game was not great. Like we can admit that. It's been 2 weeks in a row where, Lamar wasn't great. The offensive line wasn't great. Everything kind of goes into one, right? It all kind of encapsulates into one thing. And Lamar, with him and he's playing injured right now, it's like he's working through things, right? He's going through things and he's not able to do the things he wants to. So he's trying to play through it, trying to make those throws, but like, can he not step into a throw that he wants? Right? Like those are all conversations that have to be had. But, at the end of the day, this team needs to figure out how to be more consistent offensively, because if Lamar's good enough to play, he's out there playing and, does need to make those throws, but there also is the context of his injury. And that's the context that you can't ignore. So there are multiple different reasons for the struggles, multiple different things, but you can just clearly tell he is not right. He is not right out there. And that's something that I do want to acknowledge, where, Lamar's a warrior. He's competitive. He's going to play through those things. And I do give him credit for playing through those things. But, the offensive line they're asking him to play behind, it's tough. It's tough right now. So there are a lot of different reasons for it. And again, Lamar's on the short rest this week and the whole team is, we'll see with Hamilton and whatnot. But, the fact that he and Kyle Hamilton and all these guys are gutting it out, playing through these things, making sure they're available for the team, and does that impact performance? Yeah, probably. But, them being out there is, it's tough. And, you see those missed throws to like Likely, for example, that ball sailed out of bounds. He missed D-Hop on that throw in the end zone, which again, there are a lot of conversations about D-Hop on that play, whether he, I guess let up after, like right before the ball got there. I think it was just an overthrow by Lamar, little slight overthrow by Lamar. But I just, it's an ugly win, but it's a win nonetheless. It is an ugly win. Cam asking Kevin, do you think the Bengals play Burrow with 8 losses already? I think they're committed to it at this point. I think they're committed to it. I think they're going to play him. I think the NFL wants a storyline. I think the Bengals want to try to get, because they saw what happened last year. Do I think the Bengals make the playoffs this year? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I think that they're going to want to get Burrow back out there. And if he's feeling good enough and feeling healthy enough, I think they're going to. And I think they're going to. So shout out to the Ravens for winning. It was ugly. It was certainly ugly. But, Baltimore has that big game against Cincinnati coming up. Short week of rest. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot of veteran days coming up tomorrow, because obviously the practice schedule is different for Thursday night games. And then you got that Bengals stretch followed by tough end of your year with the Patriots, the Packers, and the Steelers to round it out. But should be a nice little finish for the Ravens this season. But we're going to learn a lot about this team moving forward. But they did what they were supposed to do. They beat up on the teams, maybe not beat up, but they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. And despite it looking ugly, despite there being concerning trends, a win is a win, and that's all that you can ask for. So that's all I have for you here today on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. On the way, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for that 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens covers. But don't go anywhere because we're going to start up the Locked On Ravens squad show coming up here in just a couple minutes. Myself, Sam and Joke, we're informed Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. We're going to break it all down on there. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.